Oh boy, here we go again. Look, it's no secret from my past statements on live stream or in videos that I'm not a fan of G Fuel. The one time I ever contacted them about anything was when they asked me if I wanted a discount code, and I said I wanted my code to be LEDPSN. I never heard back from them. I wonder why. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be talking about the lead contents of G Fuel in this video. I'm not an idiot, and I know that the lead amount is trace soil lead, which is found in any supplement that's using these chemicals. That is not one of the problems I have with G Fuel. The danger that I see in G Fuel is something completely unrelated to that, and I will be talking about that in the second half of the video. But strangely, that danger is more related to their marketing than anything else. So I will break that down for you in the second part of the video. But the first part of the video is the empirical, scientific part of the video. That's right, it's time for Science with Duncan. As you can see, I'm now wearing a lab coat, which means you cannot disagree with me scientifically unless you're also wearing a lab coat. That's how lab coats work. Look it up. While you're looking that up, if you are wearing a lab coat, get ready to type that I'm wrong in the comments. Please note that I have left sources in the description in a spreadsheet. It either has the direct scientific link to the studies involved, or if there are too many studies involved, it's a medical page that then amalgamates those studies and has links, again, direct links to all those studies. So you can find the direct studies through my link in the description down below. You might just have to click a few times. Sorry about that. We're going to talk about the complexes in G Fuel, and in order to do this, I need to explain a basic scientific concept, which is minimum effective dose. This is the minimum amount, the minimum weight of that chemical that you would need to ingest, or if it can't be ingested, have applied in some other way, like an injection, for example, to have any effect whatsoever. To have an effect, to make it work, is the minimum effective dose. Now, that does not mean it is the only amount that you are ever given. Obviously, people are given higher doses than the minimum effective dose, but it is pointless to give lower doses. And I'm going to be super kind to G Fuel here, and we're going to use the minimum effective doses for adult females in this instead of males because it's lower. Again, as I said, there is a link in the description with a spreadsheet that links to either the source directly or to a health-based website, which then links to the source directly. We're going to start with the energy complex and move on to the focus complex. I'm going to leave the antioxidant complex out of this because honestly, it's just fruit powder and it's only 26 milligrams. There are much better ways to get your antioxidants, but there's also nothing offensive about the antioxidant complex. The energy complex weighs 1.79 grams, which is 1,790 milligrams, and it's only specified to contain 140 milligrams of caffeine per serving. So that leaves the rest of that weight, which is 1,650 milligrams, for every other chemical in this complex. Taurine, I'm going to assume they also hit the minimum effective dose here because it's only 500 milligrams, which fits well within the 1,650 weight limit. And not having a minimum effective dose of taurine in your drink is foolish because it's a very effective chemical for waking people up. It's in Red Bull. It's in every energy drink. I'm assuming they've put even actually more than 500 milligrams of taurine in this complex. So they don't tell us exactly how much on this label, as you can see. But being kind as I am, we love G Fuel here. Use code LEDPSN for buying water instead. Close the browser. No, but taurine, we're assuming 500 milligrams, which leaves 1150 for the rest. Now, this is where it gets a bit messy because L-citrulline malate requires 3,000 milligrams in its effective minimum dose, and we have 1150 left. So we're out of space here. We have overshot. We are, in fact, bankrupt, banker. This is not having any effect whatsoever. This one I struggle with pronouncing. Glucuronolactone has a minimum effective dose of 1,000 milligrams, so you could just about squeeze that in there, but then you're definitely not also squeezing in the N-acetyl L-carnitine, which has a minimum effective dose of 1,000 milligrams. That would mean that this complex would need to weigh 5.5 grams to have the cumulative minimum effective doses for an adult female in them. So there is nothing other than the caffeine and the taurine coming from the energy complex. So it doesn't work. It's dishonest. And that's a really important fact, right? Because they market this as being better than energy drinks, giving you a slower energy release than your traditional sugary energy drinks. But what they really are is caffeine, taurine, and then you add some water. That's what G Fuel is. But what about the focus complex, Duncan? The focus complex is surely going to save them. That's 1.2 grams per serving of focusy goodness, not Really? L-tyrosine has a minimum effective dose of 2,000 milligrams, which is already, nearly double what the weight of that entire complex is. Yay! Choline bitartrate is a minimum effective dose, 550 milligrams, which brings us up to 2550 total, which is, again, a lot more. It's more than double now. And then N-acetyl L-tyrosine has a 500 milligram minimum effective dose. So that brings us up to 3,050. But here's the real kicker. Adenosine 5-triphosphate is not orally bioavailable. So its minimum effective dose orally is infinite. There is an infinite weight. You would have to consume an infinite amount of G Fuel. And you still wouldn't have gotten to the minimum effective dose for oral adenosine 5-triphosphate. It just doesn't happen. I find it disingenuous. And I think the disodium salt might make it slightly bioavailable, which is why they argue that it works, but there are not enough studies. I could not find studies on it, and every study that's tested the bioavailability of different configurations has always said it's not orally bioavailable. So it's just there as filler. It's probably cheap. But even if that was bioavailable and we went with a minimum effective dose of 0 milligrams, right? We still have 3 grams needed for this focus complex just to hit the minimum effective doses for all these chemicals, and it only weighs 1.2 grams. I don't know what else to say, but no, the focus complex is not having any effect. And that makes the marketing of G Fuel very disingenuous, because they're always talking about how they're better than other energy drinks, but they're not. They're a caffeine pill, but as a powder that you mix with water, it tastes so fruity. So I can't get behind them, one, because they're dishonest. I would never try and sell anything to you that was dishonest, or I wouldn't use myself, or I didn't think was good myself. So G Fuel really messed up here, and scientifically, empirically, this proves that they are lying to you, because it proves that these complexes don't work. They do not have the minimum effective dose in them. Simple. It's a very, very simple concept. Now, a lot of you might argue that you can drink multiple servings of G Fuel a day, but an adult's recommended maximum amount of caffeine per day is 300 milligrams to 400 milligrams, which would only be 2 to 3 doses at absolute most of G Fuel, which means unless you're drinking them back to back, in which case you are actually dangerously loading your system with caffeine, you're not getting these benefits, because by the time you have your one in the morning and your one in the afternoon, it's not going to accumulate to the minimum effective dose of the other complexes and of the other chemicals in your system. So this is why I believe G Fuel is dishonest, because they advertise this and they hammer it in their marketing. Focus better, do this, energy, slow energy throughout the day. It's not true. This is caffeine and water. And that leads perfectly into our next segment, because there's a very important fact here, and that is the fact that we should not be giving our kids G Fuel. Nobody should be giving their kids G Fuel. I think we can all agree that when the American Pediatric Association says no child under 12 should drink any caffeine under any circumstances, and children aged 12 to 18 should be limited to around 100 milligrams a day, I think we can agree that they should not be drinking something that has 140 milligrams of caffeine per serving. And it's also important to note that there have been multiple cases of children dying from caffeine shock. This is a thing that happens. A single Monster energy drink is enough to trigger it if somebody is particularly caffeine sensitive. Overdose on caffeine, effectively. Heart problems or underlying health issues are often involved, yes, but it is dangerous for a child to consume that much caffeine. So obviously nobody should market drinks like this towards children. Right? Now, as this second part is more nuanced, I'm going to take the lab coat off, and this is not an I'm right, you're wrong, but more this is my opinion, where my morality lies, and if you have a different morality, or if you lay the blame somewhere else, that's your choice. Honestly, you can't argue this one empirically. You can argue a few facts empirically, and I will be doing that, but you can't make this argument, I'm right, you're wrong, shut up. So I'm going to be talking from my morality, which I believe to be correct, because that's how morality works. I think companies have a responsibility with who they market towards, and we're going to talk about caffeine here. 140 milligrams of caffeine per serving means it's more than the American Pediatric Association recommends for an an adult almost, a child of 18 down to 12, they recommend a maximum intake daily of 100 milligrams of caffeine a day. So we're already exceeding that with a single serving of G Fuel. And for anybody under the age of 12, again, the American Pediatric Association recommends no caffeine intake at all. Studies show that it can impact brain development and similar. It should not be consumed, especially in vast quantities, by kids and people under 18, really. Keep away from caffeine unless you absolutely need it. So the fact that G Fuel is marketed almost exclusively to children, and that the CEO of G Fuel is proud of his marketing strategy, of marketing through content. Think of the content creators that market G Fuel and do the best on G Fuel and are pushing G Fuel, even in the community that I'm a part of. Now, what is the average age of their audience? Do they skew younger or older? And they are pushing G Fuel and they are selling G Fuel, and this is the company doing it. Like, these creators have a job. They haven't done their research, obviously. Like, I don't think a lot of them are my friends. And the moment I've spoken to them about this, have changed the way they do things. PokeAimMD only ever recommends the caffeine-free version of G Fuel to children, and he says for over 18s, G Fuel with caffeine is available. But he talks about that every single time he talks about G Fuel. He says he only recommends it to people over 18. So Joey, the content creator G Fuel is giving money to promote them, is the person who is imposing the moral restriction, right? Is the person who is saying only if over 18. Callum, when he makes his posts, says only over 18 because I've spoken to him about this. He is aware of this because we've sat down and I've had an honest conversation with my friend, and he's aware of this and he's aware of my feelings on it, and he has looked at the research that I presented, and he still says G Fuel if you're over 18. The company itself, however, has no such scruples. They have a disclaimer on their site that says get off if you're under 18. But they also have the CEO bragging about how he could have just advertised on Nickelodeon, but instead content creators, blah, blah, blah. Or how great his marketing strategy is to go for these content creators who create for kids, or how his kids drink it. And I believe he has adult children who drink it. And so he can argue, well, I said my kids drink it, but my kids are adults. But when you say in marketing or in an interview or on Twitter, my kids drink it, they don't think you're talking about your children. They think you're talking about actual children. You know, that's how that comes across. And I think it's very deliberate optics. And the problem is that people have died from caffeine shock in the past. This isn't some weird, oh, well, maybe this, maybe that. Kids have died from 200 milligrams of caffeine. Young kids who've shotgunned two monsters have died, and it is dangerous. I don't think that the company is trying to kill kids. I think that they view kids as an easy marketing because it's easier to market to children. It's easier to sell things to children. This is just a fact. You know, kids go to their parents, oh, mommy, buy me G Fuel, and the parent swipes credit card. Now, some of you will lay the blame at the parents' feet and say, well, G Fuel says don't use the site if you're under 18, and these parents are choosing to give their children caffeine, and I understand where you're coming from. But that implies that G Fuel isn't deliberately targeting an underage audience, which is what I believe they are doing. So that's where I think the distinction lies. I think I would not consider G Fuel dangerous if they weren't marketing it towards children, if they weren't deliberately targeting children. But they are. They're not targeting, you know, me. At 30 years old, they're not targeting me to get me to buy G Fuel. They want me to sell G Fuel to the kids in my audience. That's what they want me to do, right? That's what they want all content creators to do. That's how their marketing machine works. I think if you are a parent, consider maybe not buying your kids G Fuel. It is overpriced caffeine water. It is insanely expensive for what it is. You could buy literally 10 times or 20 times the amount in just caffeine as a supplement if you're an adult buying it for yourself and you just want some caffeine. This is caffeine water. Mix some caffeine with some orange juice and go nuts. It will be cheaper. I guarantee it. You will pay less money. You do you, guys. You do you, but this is my opinion on G Fuel. This is my thoughts. It's my empirical data as well. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.